But I quickly learned I wanted to feel seen, heard, and loved. And unfortunately, I didn't grow up with the most, emotional family. I didn't grow up with um the ideal type of friendships. Growing up, I remember just craving, to make close friends because that wasn't something I got from home. So I just remember growing up, like even throughout elementary school and like high school, I always wanted to be friends with the people who I admired. Um, and I didn't. Sometimes I have to admit, there was times where I didn't really cherish. How do I say this? I didn't really cherish the friendships that were good for me, but I always seeked out friendships where I was the one that would pursue it, right? Even though it may have not been in a situation, even though it may have not have been an ideal situation where it was reciprocal. Um, and I believe there's a lot of it was from my upbringing, being used to like always like begging for love or craving for love, or so basically that was something that I always created a scenario around. Um, and then like just growing up, like when I did make really good close friends, it was like they moved away, so for me, it was always easy to just put walls up, right? Because then you create this story in your mind where you're like, oh my God, every time I make a close friend, I basically lose them because they always moved away. Especially the ones where I admired, or sometimes there were friendships I admired, but it wasn't reciprocal. Um, it didn't go the way I like imagined it to. It didn't go as far as I imagined it to. So which is going to lead me into the 4 points of why we crave deep connection, because you're not crazy if you do. Um, and I just wanted to talk about my friendship lessons that I didn't know I needed. Just from these 4 points of why we crave deep connections. Um, so the first one was surface. So first one was just deep connection. So the point was like surface level has come to a point where it just isn't for me. Now, maybe in another life it was where I was okay with just like catching up with a friend like every few weeks or catching up with a friend every few months. Um, but it's come to a point where I've got a taste of friendships where it's just beyond that level. And I'm done with the anxiety when it's like when you're not hearing from a friend and then your mind kind of goes. And I understand people have their lives. I understand like people have their own things. But it could get draining when you think about it. Like I just saw a girl post. She made a post on social media where she talked about how she like messaged her friend and she was like, "Is it normal not to hear from them like for days?" And at that point, I was like, okay, like, if you don't hear from them, call them. But then I said at the same time, like, I prioritize, like, friendships that are very dear to me, I will respond in a jiffy. Like, like, there's no reason why it would take me, like, 7 days just to respond to a simple message. Like, if someone sends me a message, obviously, if I'm busy, I'm busy, but I will respond right away. Like, I prioritize the people that I care about. If it's someone that, a friendship where it doesn't that matters to me as much or is not as important, I'm not gonna rush and respond. So I told her right away that friend may not be that into you, like to be honest. And I just found it was draining because you have to be consistently having to check in with the person. And for me, like these catch up friendships like felt like it was like you're booking an appointment every time. And it was like it felt like, oh, every time you're disconnected, right? Because you maybe not talk for weeks or months. And then you're just trying to like book an appointment and then you have to like catch up again. And I found those type of friendships exhausting. So honestly, for this year, my friendship lesson was like, okay, I think it's time to slow down those types of friendships. And not even bother like literally catching up with those type of people because I just found like it's just not my ideal friendship and I just crave deeper connection. Um and I found that friendships are easier when it flows. And I only know this because I've been making really good friendships lately. And I know I talked about it my birthday, like making such awesome friends. Hey. And I got to see what it's like when the friendship just flows in terms of, you talk, every so often the conversation just flows, like the person is reaching out and then you're reaching out, and it's a whole different level, and you don't feel like you're completely disconnected. Um, and you don't feel like it's like you don't feel like the conversation has caught up, if that makes sense. Like it feels like the conversation just continues. Where I found that the friends where I'm just catching up with, I'm like, it almost felt like it began to feel like some waste of time. Like, yes, it'll be nice in the moment, but it's like then you're like, okay, but like I haven't spoken to you for like half the year. Like there was one friend where I met her in January and then haven't spoken to her like until May. And I was like, do I really want friendships like that where you're only talking like 2, 3 times a year? Like I don't have time for that. Um, and I just feel like deep connections are just rare. And when you find them, you have to like hold on to them. And I just feel like if it can't get past the surface level, like, you know, if we can't get past the surface level, it's like the friendships are not worth it to me. Like it's like I've reached that point in my life, and I think everyone should get to that point where you seek deeper friendships, right? I remember I saw this study, and I know I said it before, where the study said like when there's intimacy in like when you're the more vulnerable you are in the friendship, the more intimacy, basically, the more deeper the friendship is, the more closer you are to them. And I'm like, that makes so much sense. It's like when you're able to just have that constant flow of conversation, um, when you have that constant flow of conversation, it's just so powerful because then there's a bond that's created. But I feel like it's just hard to, and you guys can let me know how your friendship's been, but I feel like it's hard to, um, it's just hard to create friendships, when you're only talking like, um, oh my God, hold on. It's just hard to create friendships when you're only talking like 3 times a year. Like I think it's just crazy. Um, and so the next one was deep friendships. Makes you feel seen and heard. And I never thought of it like that until like I started really digging into this topic. But it's like when I since I've been building friendship, I noticed like people will ask about your day, they'll ask how you're doing. Like it's like a constant flow of communication. Um, there share things they're doing. Like I had a friend the other day, like which was so nice. Where she'd be like, "Oh, how's your day?" And she'd be like, "Oh, like I went to the gym, blah blah blah." And I like that constant flow of conversation where you're just talking about everyday things, and you're not always talking about major things. Like I love that. Like I love the idea of not having to talk about just major points or milestones. Like I love the idea of the conversation. That's what I mean by like a natural conversation that you have every day where you're like, hey, how's it going? Like, how was your day? Oh, it was a hard day, like, or it was a good day. And then you kind of elaborate. And like I appreciate that because it feels more real and it's not like you're just holding on to like just the good parts. Like you're hearing the good and bad parts. So I kind of like that. Um and I feel like those type of friendships, like in terms of feeling seen and heard, um, it also leaves space for you to express yourself. Like I feel like you're building that kind of bond where like you could actually just say like what you're feeling, and there's like an open communication. Like I've had friendships in the past where I feel like it was built on you, like you're just kind of going out together. So then when you set boundaries, like all of a sudden the friendship ends because they're not used to that, and if you haven't gotten to that point where like just speak freely. So I think like if you're in a friendship, like having a deep connection, like it could just create a space where you feel seen and heard, and you feel like, oh, I can express myself. I can say what I'm thinking. Um, and I think I've become tired of just having conversations where it just isn't deep enough. Like I love conversations when it comes to friendships where it just goes deeper, just beyond like, yeah, this is what's been going on in a few months, but like it's like a it's just like a sense of everything. It's just a sense of everything. So like it just reminds me of like it's like when you're dating, like if you're dating someone or you're with someone and you just have surface level conversation, like you're dating, your romantic relationship will probably wouldn't go as far. Right? Because you're just talking about stuff. And it's if every day is just like, how are you? And you're like, good. And then you're like, okay, good. Good morning. Okay. Night. Like it gets so robotic and then you get tired of that because like the conversation is not going beyond that. Um and I believe like that's why some of like I will see some women depend on searching for a man while single because they're not getting that from their like friendships, in terms of feeling being seen and heard from their platonic friends, right? um that's the thing I found. Because thinking about it, it's like when you're in that romantic type relationship, it's like you're getting the conversation aspect, you're sharing your day, you're being excited to speak to each other, right? You're planning things consistently. um and I feel like there's aspects of dating and friendships that we miss, like in that we miss in a friendship. Because when I started listing it out, I was like, this is interesting because sometimes I've had friendships where it's just missing that continuous conversation aspect where you're talking on a consistent basis. Not maybe not every day, not like a romantic one. But it's like it misses that point where you're like sharing your day, you're like talking about like what happened that day and just you're just sharing like everyday conversation and then you're just being excited for each other. And it's very hard to like really portray that if you're speaking to each other like once a month. Like I just don't think it's feasible. But I think if you're talking to each other multiple times a month, it just helps. It creates that excitement in your friendships. Um, and I believe that sometimes what people seek when they're single is like they're seeking that part of connection that they're not getting from friendships, which I arguably believe that they should be getting that from friendship, but they start seeking it in dating. And I know that like when I didn't know how to be in my solitude and didn't understand this is why I would always date because I was like, oh well, I don't have any friendships, so let me go and date. Like that was the automatic like next step for me. But then as I started to make more friends, I got to see like, oh, like this is a different level, like this is a different connection. And I got to see like you like having friendships allows you to be more comfortable with your solitude. And even I would arguably say like having friendship allows you to learn how to create healthy boundaries, which later flows into dating relationships. Because you just become more comfortable in your solitude, you get to know more about who you are. And it's like you're not seeking a relationship from a place of, oh, I'm lonely and I have no friends, but you're seeking it from, hey, I'm already full, my life is already full, and you're just the addition to in my life. Right? I think that's so important. Deep connections can be healing when you don't have family or romantic relations. That's the next point. Um, I mean, sometimes you can get this backwards because, like I said, when we feel lonely, we automatically seek romantic relationships. Um, and and then we don't understand why, or we may not be aware, right? Because if you haven't experienced really healthy friendships, like your automatic go-to is going to be romantic because I would say it's a little bit easier to meet like a guy on a dating app than it is to make a friend. Now, I'm not saying making friends is hard, but it's way easier to like create that connection faster. But the guy doesn't mean that it's the right person, but it's definitely way easier to get a date. right, and meet someone and do like go places together than it is to um meeting a friend and then really connecting and all that stuff. Like there's a lot more motivation when it comes to dating because people have their own intentions and what they want from that like specific relationship, whether that's like just a one night stand or like something long term. But people tend to have more drive to build a dating relationship than they do a friendship. So that's why I'm saying it's more easier, right? Because people are more likely to put more effort. Um, and sometimes people are very centered. There's lot of women that are male centered, and I'm sure there are men as well. But a lot of women are very male centered, and they like that feeling of being seen. See, it goes back to being seen, basically my point. They like the feeling of being seen and heard and getting and basically getting the things that they're not getting from their friendships. Now I'm not talking about obviously like romantically, but from a friendship platonic point of view, a lot of times it's harder to build that deeper connection in a friendship because it requires a lot more effort, and both parties have to be intentional. And it's not a love interest. So a love interest is a little bit different, right? So I think that's very interesting. Like once I started like really breaking it down. Um, and like I said, it's like when I didn't have friends, I seeked more dates, right? Because like you said, because there was something that you're getting out of it. Um, to get by on times. Now, sometimes it's just like, hey, I'm not doing anything on the weekends. But to combat that, what I started doing is I started filling up my schedule. So when I saw, okay, on the weekends, like I usually feel like when on the weekends I wasn't doing much, and then that's when I would be like, okay, let me go on a date. Then I was like, you know what? How about I start planning my weekends intentionally and actually doing fun things that I enjoy, so I don't automatically resort to dating. This was years ago, by the way. Um, and once I started doing that, then it got easier where I was like, okay, I'm not depending on going on a date because let's face it, dating can get very dangerous because you don't know who the heck you're meeting. Um, and and then once I did that, I started with the solitude, and then I started like building friendships, right? But then once you build friendships, so once I started making women friends, um, I find that the need for attention from a man decreased. Because then you're doing fun things. Like there was something about just going out with the girls. Like it was just so nice. Like something just like a simple dinner, or it was like an activity like escape room. And it was just nice to just like be yourself, like your hair done. You don't realize it, but like when you're going on a date with someone, it's like yes, you're yourself, but you're still showing your best self. You're like still like performing, right? Like you just have to dress up, all that stuff. Like you're performing. You're like you're trying to see like what are they coming with? Like you don't know what's gonna happen. Like you don't know them. But it's like when you're going out with your like best friends, like when you're going with your best friends, it's like they already know you. And I feel like there's a little bit of walls that you can just like take down, so it's like you're more relaxed, and you kind of know what to expect. You know you're gonna have a good time and so forth, but it's kind of unpredictable with a date. Not to say that you don't have a good time. It's just way different. I just that's why I also believe like people who are in relationships should have friendships as well. You should not just have your romantic partner. You should have friendships. Like I think that's so important. Like I respect my friends who are married, but they still make conscious efforts to make friends with other people, because they realize like hey, the whole world can evolve around someone you're dating. Like yes, like you put them first, but you also add friends to your life because it adds in their mix. And there's just some things that you could talk about with like women or your friends compared to what you talk about with your like your partner. Um, so yeah. So I once like so example, so once my need from it so once I started making friends and I went through all that process and learning like, oh, like this is very powerful. Like I noticed like my like urge to like want to just continue to date decreased. That's when I discovered like, really having healthy friendships. and it can be such a blessing. Um, like if you could find healthy friendships, um, it can be so healing in your life. Like that was the point. It's like, especially if you don't have friends or um especially if you don't have family, or like you don't have the haven't grown up with like very healthy relationships, like it could teach you a thing or two, right? It could teach you to put your walls down. It could just teach you to realize that, oh, like I can be open, like I can trust this person. Like healthy friendships are so powerful, especially if you're working on yourself. Like if you're doing it two together where you're working on yourself and you're building friendships, it's such a beautiful thing. um and it could change the way you see life. It could change the way you see yourself. Um, and and also it also allows you to, like, example, like now that I'm making more and more friends, like sometimes they'll post like stuff to try. Like, for example, like I haven't done tennis in a while and they're like, hey, do you want to do tennis? Like it just also allows you to like create these side quests and like hobbies that you probably maybe wouldn't have done by yourself because you can't really do tennis by yourself, right? So it's just like those little things where they may introduce you to new things. Like someone else the other day was talking about D&D, right? Which is like the game, and basically learning it. And I didn't know that was a thing where they teach you how to like play the game and stuff. And so like now that's something I'm going to be going to in a few weeks. But like it can open the doors to other things that you never really imagined. Hey girl, hey. Um, and so the last point was, so deep, real friendships can help women put their walls down. Um, and there's something that heals inside of you when you start to develop real friendships and you see that, oh my gosh, like I'm good and you? How was your day? Is it Peyton? Yeah, Peyton. And it's just something so freeing to be able to share your life with, because a lot of times you don't get that opportunity. You don't realize it, but like there's not a lot like you can go days where have surface level friendships where like when people ask how your day's going, you're just saying it's good and yours, and then you go on about your day. But it's something about being able to just share like your actual day, like share your inner thoughts, like things that you've been struggling with. Sharing milestones of your life, like even just sharing your life, like being able to share certain things your life together, like whether that's birthdays, celebrations, like anything that's like a milestone, not just like weddings and baby showers, but I'm talking about actual milestones. I think that's something, um it's something so powerful, and it's something so sacred to be able to trust someone with your deepest thoughts, because I realize like that's such a privilege. Like not a lot of people get that opportunity to be able to share their secrets or their deepest thoughts, like share things that they usually don't tell people, or share things that's very personal. Like to be able to find a friend where you can put your wall down and then just be able to talk about real life and not have to hold it in, and not have to constantly just battle it on your own, and being able to share that with a friend. And it's like, and you create that bond, right? Because then you get closer and closer, because there's this sense of, oh, like this person trusts me, and then vice versa. I just think that's so powerful, because it sucks like if you're going through something and then you don't have anyone to talk to about it. Or you ever had those moments where you're like, oh man, I wish I had someone that I could talk to. Like I'm not just saying a therapist, but like an actual friend where you're like, oh girl, this is what happened, like, or giving your opinion, blah blah blah. I think that's so precious. But I understand it's not really rampant, like, it's unless someone's, like, trauma dumping on you, but you don't want that. But I think it's, like, a good balance of being able to do that, and I think a lot of people, like, they yearn for that, to be able to just talk to someone and share things, and good and bad moments. I feel like it's a dying art, especially with texting. I feel like, texting kind of removes all this. It's caused things to be more surface level than before. Like, I feel like when you're talking on the phone, you'll talk about more things. Like, so so if I text a friend, sometimes it flows, right? Because now you can send like voice text and stuff like that, so that helps. But like, there's something about talking about on the phone because you just talk about more and more things. So sometimes you can spend on the phone like 30 minutes or an hour. Where on a text, think about it, you're only spending like maybe a total of like 15 minutes, right? Between texting because it only takes so long. So I think I think texting sometimes kills off like relationships going further. I'm not saying like it kills a friendship, but I find like when I talk to friends on the phone, it's just more deeper. It goes on a different level. Because I'm guessing like it's their the undivided attention, right? They're not like multitasking. They're not just like writing one word, especially if they're not a texter. Um, all I can say is call your friends. Especially if you want deep connections, like especially if you have met someone, like set up a time and call them, or just call them. Like let's get out of the like habit of just texting. Like even with that girl when she was like, oh, like the person has responded in days, and I'm like, okay, if I text someone, obviously like maybe that person wasn't interested in speaking with her, but it's like if you don't hear from someone, call them. Like don't just text. Um, especially if you want those real friendships. Like even if you just meet them, right? And you just call them and like you don't have to like get all crazy. Like especially if you just meet, but like even if you just call and you talk for 10, 15 minutes. And then because usually people are off it kind of makes you stand out because people are usually like sidetracked. But yeah, but even if they're like, oh hey, and they're thinking something happened, you're just like, no, I'm just calling. Like I've done stuff like that. And like you just talk for 10, 15 minutes. And then I feel like it deepens the relationship. It's like the same idea of going to like a coffee shop or something, and you're sitting across from each other and having conversation. I just think it's like a dying art. Like, yes, we go to dinners, yes, there's events, but there's just something about like just talking on the phone or in person where you're just having conversation, like constant flow. But like the more you talk on the phone, it increases your hour time. That's something I learned about from Mel Robbins, where she talked about a study where they said basically in high school the reason why there's so many like close friendships is because you're seeing them every day. So like they said like you technically need about like 150 hours or something crazy like that in order to really deepen a friendship. So think about it, if you're working and stuff or you're in like college, school, whatever, and you're working or you have a business, whatever, like usually you're only meeting a person maybe like once a month or maybe every few weeks. And like unless like it's very rare that I've met friends where they meet every day. I've met a few people like that where they actually meet like between their lunch breaks and stuff. So, and then they're super close because they're seeing each other very often. Even if it's like 15 minutes at a time, 30 minutes at a time, they're going to like Pilates classes together. So they're really like joining their day, but you don't get that all the time. So it's like you have to put that in perspective. So like just even talking on the phone increases that hour time. Um, bec- the more hours you put in and you guys are connecting, it's like the closer you get, like the more chances you get. But it's like if you're only meeting 1 hour, like a month, or like you're only seeing each other on an event, like yes, you can get close, but it's very, very hard unless you guys are meeting weekly and you guys are talking throughout the week. That's even better, right? If you guys can get to that point, um, to create that deep friendship. But I know it's like it's something that it's like very hard to do. I'm curious to know what you guys' friendships are like. But yeah, like I find in my experience, like creating like beyond surface level friendships can be very hard and takes a lot of effort. But it's not impossible. But it's just stuff that I've discovered. Like and I did give like the 4 points, like, in terms of, it could be healing, deep connection could be healing. There's so many benefits to creating a deep friendship. Like the healing, and I talked about like going beyond surface level. I talked about feeling seen and heard. So there's so much benefit. So it's like, why wouldn't you do it? But yes, it's a lot of work. But like once you put in the work, it starts to pay off. You start to see the benefits of it. Um, and also like trust builds as well. So the trust builds, and it also proves that once the trust builds and you see that you can be vulnerable with the person and you're creating this deep connection, it also changes the way you think of people, like especially if you've been hurt from friendships. I think that's a big one. You start to see it and it reminds you, okay, like there's good people like out there. Like there's good people out there that you could kick it with and they could be like your childhood best friend type thing. It's funny because I was talking to this woman where it was online and um I guess she was feeling lonely, like not having friendships um and I gave her a virtual hug and she's like, oh, I needed that. And I remember telling her like this is your reminder that it's completely possible to make friends that will console you, support you, love you, feel you seen, make you feel seen and heard. And she responded with, I hope so. And I'm like, no, it's real. But you have to put in the effort. Like, if you feel like you have walls, which I understand, okay? But if you feel like you have walls, and then every time you're telling a story, oh, like, um, if you're constantly just telling yourself, I don't have this, I don't have friends, I feel lonely, all this stuff, but it's like you're not putting the conscious effort to reach out to a friend that you maybe haven't spoken to, or you reach out to someone and just have a conversation with them, or you invite them somewhere. Like, guys, it's crucial. Like, it's very hard to build something if you're not initiating. Like, and you can't wait. You can't wait for people to initiate. Like, you have to just like, so I'm organizing a well, not me, just me, but me and my church, the church is a group of us are organizing a gardening party. And right away I started inviting people, like people who I've been building friendships with, because then like now they're gonna see me more and more, right? They're seeing me for my birthday, they're gonna see me at the garden party. And then it introduces conversation. And I'm constantly inviting them. Now it doesn't mean that they've been inviting me everywhere, like it just depends, but like you're constantly doing it. And then even there was another friend where like I even told her, okay, let's set up a time to go to Ottership. So Ottership is this place in Toronto where you do plunge, like you plunge in cold water and stuff. And like you have to be very intentional about inviting people. So if you're lonely, like you have to be the one to like initiate, and eventually people will start to go back and forth with you. They will start to ask you, hey, do you want to go here? Like they see a place, they'll start sending you memes. Like you want to get to a point where like you're building that relationship back and forth and not just sitting around waiting. If you wait, you're gonna be left behind, okay? And you're not gonna build those friendships because there's someone out there else out there that's initiating that friendship, having conversation, texting, right? Initiating meetups, like coffee dates, like you know what I mean, like with friends. Like there's someone out there that's planning like a tennis meetup or a board game cafe meetup. And there's people doing, I see girls doing it, like where they're like, oh, let's go to this, and I'll usually go. And that's another thing. Like if people are inviting you to things or creating opportunities for you to build relationship, you need to go. So even if you're tired, I mean, unless you're like super exhausted or sick or something, but like even if you're tired, you need to push yourself and go. Like this is a given. Like you need to go. Like this is like every time you can like the one thing I notice is like the people who complain about friendship are the ones that tend to cancel plans, or they always like make an excuse or something like that. Um they're always making an excuse. Um And you just can't have friendships like that. Like I've seen people like that. They always make excuses, or you know what I mean? You know when you try to plan something and then every like people just start bailing, and I'm like, that is not cool. Like that's not how you build like friendships. Like you cannot be canceling, and like it's not gonna be always convenient. That's my point is like when you're trying to organize something, it's not gonna be convenient. Like most of the time it's gonna feel inconvenient. Um Like, unless you're busy, but it's gonna feel inconvenient, you're gonna feel tired, but the reality is you're always gonna be working, okay? You're always gonna be working to pay bills, like, it never stops, like, it just doesn't. So, you have to pick your battles, and I've quickly learned, like, okay, if there's something I'm interested in, I will definitely join in. Um, but yeah, I will definitely join in, push myself to join in. But that's what you have to do is you have to like encourage yourself, push yourself to join these type of events. Because if you want a deep connection, you want those close friendships like that, that's what you have to do. And the more they see your face pop up, the more you guys meet, is the more you guys will meet, and they'll reach out and be like, oh yeah, this is that good Nikia that always joins, blah blah blah. And the more encounters you have, the more easier it is to start to build that friendship. Um, always, I created this journal called the Strong Friend Reset, and it has a whole quiz in there, guys. Like talking about what type of friends you are. Like there's like like a draining friendship section, boundary section, in this friendship journal. So you could definitely go in my description and get this on my stand store, and check it out. I'll put it in the comments, if you're interested. But yeah, this was nice chatting with everyone. And yeah, check out the comments. You'll see the journal there. Have a good day. Bye.